Well, now's the best part because you get to meet the cast and the creators of the show. I'm Chris Beachum, the managing editor for the awards website Gold Derby. And I think they asked me here because this show is a real awards magnet, we feel. It's already been a Golden Globe nominee for Best Comedy Series, Emmy Award ballot's coming out soon, and we think it's going to do really well. Let's meet the cast and crew. First up, playing Alex, Tommy Dewey. As Valerie, Michaela Watkins. Laura is played by Lynne Barr. The director of both episodes you saw tonight and executive producer, Jason Reitman. And the creator, executive producer, and writer, Zander Lehmann. We're just going to talk for a few minutes among ourselves, but if you've got questions, you can go to the bottom of either of the stairs. We'll have microphones there, and we'll start letting you ask your own questions here in just a few minutes. A few of you. We got a party in a few minutes, so we don't want 30 or 40 questions. Zander?
Late to our party. Yeah.
I know where people want to go.
I'm happy to stay after and answer as many questions as you like.
One-on-one, right? Zander, what was the biggest change for you moving from a first season? You had a few weeks off, a few months off, hopefully, and then getting ready for a second season.
Well, it was nice to have a life for a couple of months. I think you guys all know these things take over, and they sort of control everything that you do. So, having that break was great, and we came back. I think we were all very excited to get back into it. And we just happened to really love each other, and I missed these guys. So it was exciting to get back to work and also being around them all day, every day. That was, you miss that when you're sitting alone in your apartment being like, please pick us up again. Let's go. More episodes, please. I miss my friends. So, yeah, it was that mostly.
You say that as if you don't hang out with Tommy every single day already.
I hang out with Tommy every day.
Yeah, we see each other live.
Jason, you directed the pilot back a while ago. And I believe the next episode after that, you returned to direct these two. What was the biggest difference in this cast from when you first directed them?
I mean, look, I think the answer I think you would expect is that, when we were doing the first season, they were still figuring it out, and then when you come back for the second season, they were a well-oiled machine. But the truth is, this is one of the most unusual situations I've ever had as a director, where the actors literally from day one just kind of knew exactly the rhythm of their dialogue, and bonded from moment one. So strangely, it was actually very similar to season one. We walked into that house, we have this incredible set, we have this incredible cast that has this automatic chemistry, and it frankly makes my job very easy and lovely. Thank you.
Tara, you've got really, a quite different mom on this show and a quite different uncle than a lot of us have had. What? First of all, I would say, do you have any kind of an uncle similar to Alex?
No, darn it. No, my family life is pretty tame compared to Laura's. I'm very grateful that we don't openly discuss our sex lives.
Anything they've had you do on this show that your parents or family has had a few raised eyebrows?
Oh, where to start? How long do you have? That's the first thing I do when I get an episode, a script. I just flip through it and see if there's any sex scenes, and then I prepare accordingly, and I warn my parents. Yeah, of course, totally. I have to give them warnings before each episode. Like scene 8, make sure there's a point where, I don't.
Michaela, I mentioned this to you. I interviewed you a few months ago, and you're the queen of expressions. You say so much in a look of an eye or a smile or a frown.
Jason said I always look like toast is burning in another part of the house.
I'm stealing that.
Is that the direction he gives you?
No, but if I ever teach, when I retire and teach my 7 a.m. $800 course, that'll be the whole thesis of it. I have to show this to the world. I'm sorry, may I? I have to show this to the. This is happening down here, you guys. This is a phone purse. It's got a dial. It's got a. You can talk on it. It's a real phone. Okay.
She's doing crowd work now, so.
I'm sorry. It caught my eye, and then I have ADHD, so that was.
I saw where later this week you're booked on a QVC slot, right?
Congrats.
What beyond the relationship stories? I know you must really enjoy doing the scenes in the therapist office.
Love them. Yeah, I've been to therapy, and it's a really tough place. I love those. They're very well written. They're very realistic. It feels like, and it's nice to be on the other side of the couch and know what it's like. What it must have been like to want to say all the things but not be able to.
And you Tommy, you got, at least in the second episode, something really different to do, which is become a teacher.
Yeah, I'd be a lousy teacher. Alex is always looking for distractions, and season 2 just takes that up a notch. He's coming out of Sis here sleeping with the girlfriend, and so anything to keep him from processing what that actually means. And lucky for him, there's a slot available in Laura's homeschool, which lasts 1 week.
For all of you, getting the Golden Globe nomination, Best Comedy Series, I mean, they only have 5 slots, and there's like 500 comedy series, it seems now, with all the different outlets. What was that night like celebrating together? No alcohol, I'm sure.
Yeah, someone should tell me. I don't. I'll say this: it was really exciting to be with Hulu for it. They're full speed ahead into this original content game, and it was really nice to celebrate that moment with them, because it was they've really supported this from the show and what these guys wanted to do with it, the show from the beginning, and.
Well, the one thing I love more than anything about the Golden Globe is, Jason, you've been there on the film side, now you've been there on the TV side. Any difference for you in terms of the party that night?
I mean, they serve the same food to both film and television. No, it's absolutely lovely and completely surreal, and it was a real thrill to be Hulu's first. And they supported this show really from day one, and it always felt as though, as much as they were making the show, they were also fans of the show. So it was a thrill for us, and I think there was this kind of excitement of, oh wow, we got to be there first.
Also, if you rewatch the telecast, when John Hamm stands up, if you pause it at just the right moment, my right eye is exposed. A real moment of glory.
I sat next to the Game of Thrones table. It's really exciting.
Oh, they didn't have you all at the same table?
No, it wasn't. Oh, no.
She was at the kids' table.
Oh,
I was at the kids' table, yes, I was.
You were with Arya.
Yes,
It's cute.
I was
It's
with
really
Arya,
cute.
And
Yeah.
I was with the Mother of Dragons.
They drink high C.
Zander, after the first season finished airing and you'd be talking to somebody out, a friend or somebody just in public, what was a scene or a moment that most got brought up?
Oh, man. Probably the Thanksgiving episode, 108. I think everyone was like, the comment that I got the most was, we've seen 1,000 Thanksgiving episodes, but none have been as fucked up as that one. And I take a lot of pride in that, because I feel like that was the one that Hulu was nervous about. They were like, everyone's done a Thanksgiving episode. And we're like, trust us. We're going to do one more fucked up than anyone else's. And I think we delivered, and it's the thing that people tend to sort of remember. Also, killing the dog was another thing that people talk about. They really harp on the sort of negative moments at times. It's a comedy, yes. It's a dark comedy, and I think people have responded to the way that we treat kind of sadness and depression and loss and difficult families, and find what I think is sort of a little light that shines through that. And I think a lot of that's because of our cast, who's able to find the humanity there, and our directors, who were able to pull comedy out of scenes that would generally be very dark and sad in the wrong hands.
Tara, after people saw that first season, what was a moment or a scene or an episode they really wanted to chat with you about?
When I cursed out my mom on the lawn for having fucked the teacher that I was looking to fuck.
We're dropping a lot of F-bombs tonight, team.
Oh, I apologize. I'm so sorry. Yeah, that was probably a big one. I mean, it wasn't terribly pleasant to shoot because I don't like screaming at Michaela Watkins at midnight in North Hollywood on somebody's lawn. And people are looking out their windows like, what's going on? That's probably the big one, simply because it is so out there, and Laura's delusions sort of like come to a peak at that moment, and it's totally sad, and she's sort of having a little breakdown, and I like to relive it when people come up to me and tell me about it in Gelson's, so it happens every time.
Michaela, what about you on the first season? Like
The
a particular scene that people really want to talk about?
I think that the biggest, thing, the moment, is either when my brother puts his hand on my foot when we're on the couch, because that just feels really subversive or weird or something. It all of a sudden signals exactly what this relationship is, and people don't know where to put that in their brain. There's not a home for that in the brain. And then I think the second thing is the spoons was so cringy to a lot of people because probably because they've lived it. I've probably lived it. It's easy to screw up and do the wrong thing socially, and dating is weird, and I'm sure getting back out there is extra weird.
And you, Tommy?
I hear about the foot moment. I hear about episode 103 has an extended sex scene with a dog in the room. I hear about that one. There was a guy clicking spoons below the bed. That's another story for another time. And I hear about the dog as if I, Tommy, physically killed a real dog.
Well, you were upset over it.
I did not. And, yeah, I was upset. I tried to kill myself after, in fact. So, yes.
Well, let's take a few questions. We'll start right over on that side. There's a microphone there, I believe.
How you doing? It's kind of crazy having to go from the front around. My name is Pierre. I'm an agent and Academy member. I have one of my actors who was actually guest starred on Casual, who's in the front row. Dave Baudry's in the second season.
Hi, Dave.
So my question was, Hulu is a fairly new network. How did you actually sell the series to Hulu? It's called Casual. What was the pitch? How did that happen? That's my question.
Well, I think, had more than most people have when they go do a pitch. We had written the first two scripts ahead of time, so they had read sort of what the show would be, what the tone was supposed to be, and Jason was signed on. So at that point, we went in and pitched to them and said, you've seen these two episodes, and Jason's going to direct them, and this is an idea of sort of what the themes we're trying to cover for this season and some of the storylines and what we're hoping to do. And, of course, all of us are sort of novices to TV, so they would ask questions like, well, how many episodes do you see this going? And our answer was, well, how many do you expect? Like, what do you want? It was very much a give and take of like trying to figure out exactly what this show would look like and how it would work. I think for us, having the material down on the page ahead of time, having Jason signed on, it became a question of who will make the show in the way that we want to make it and give Jason the control to sort of make the beautiful show that he's made. And Hulu was the one who stepped up and said, we want to do that version. And we could not be happier with how that relationship has gone.
Okay. Question over on this side.
Too late to get up. This is for Zander. What was the inspiration for the two Cyndi Lauper songs on that second episode? Couldn't help but notice.
That's a lot of Jason, actually. It was one of those things where we were looking at what that montage could be, what sort of joy Alex could experience as he's getting his life back together and putting together this sort of weird curriculum. Jason has a brain for music, and he was like, what about this song? And we just kind of loved it. And at that point, it was like, oh, man, this is great. We could do an interesting callback and see it from the other side on Val when she's sitting in the car. I don't know if we initially wrote them into the script, but it was a conversation that came about, and we realized, oh, this is a perfect chance to have two sort of side-by-side montagey pieces with this music that we all love so much. And waffles.
One thing I've got to mention, when you mentioned the song, when I was sitting over here watching the 2 episodes, it's so fun for me to have the cast around, and you would all be laughing so much on the other people's work. I don't get, maybe you don't get to see that filmed, or you don't get to see it until it's actually in the episode. But just talk about just enjoying things beyond your own scenes.
Well, this season is unique. There's 2 seasons, so it's, I don't know how unique it is. But it's unique from last year, where we sort of all have our own journeys. And while we're very much together in the first episode, it drops the seeds of when we start to sort of sprout off onto our own. And, I've seen a few, and it's so fun to be able to see, because we see each other at work, but we don't know what we're doing behind, when we're not in the scene. So there's so much of that for all 3 of us. It's not like a lot of this or a lot of this. We're separate a lot this season, and I have to say, they're very funny people. So that's why we laugh.
Well, funny and touching. That's what's so great about this series is even in the same scene, it can be one and both. I was definitely told to ask a couple of questions about behind the scenes. Tell us who is the one that's most often late to the set?
None of them are ever late. This is like the most crazy professional group of actors, and they always know their lines, and they're always on time. And it's one of those rare experiences where everyone sort of brings their A game, and I think it elevates the crew and our writing and all of that, because we don't want to let them down. If they're going to show up on time and know the words, we better write good words for them.
Well, I live there, so I just wake up and pop in.
Do you have a typical table read for each episode like most shows?
Yeah, we do. We table read everything. And thankfully, we're lucky enough to write a lot of the scripts ahead of time, so the actors have a decent idea of where they're going and where they're coming from, and they sort of have perspective, so the table reads are never a disaster and you have to blow it all up. It's mostly just fine-tuning and sort of getting the right feel for all those words, which they're so good at.
Well, to Zander's credit, I mean, he and these writers, producers work so hard that the table scripts are in such great shape that the changes are so minimal from there, between there and the shooting script. It's like no other show I've ever done. I mean, we've all done shows where the shooting draft is unrecognizable vis-a-vis the table draft. So it makes work easier in that respect, for sure.
There's a lot of thought put into every single line, and the way the whole series unfolds, it's not like by the time we're shooting, they've pretty much broken the entire spread. So while we don't know what happens in the next episode, they sure do, and and you can see how the series, particularly season 2, is so layered. It just may feel like something might be inconsequential in episode 2, but it's so meaningful in episode 5, and it's very thoughtful.
Who else has a question from the audience? We've got mics on either side. Right over here.
I love the previous question about how you sold the show, because if I had Jason Reitman on my show, I'd buy anything he was attached to. I'm a huge fan, Jason. You're amazing, amazing talent, amazing. And so I'd like to know, Zander, how did you get Jason attached? And then how did you cast these amazing people? Because this cast it could easily be called natural, because they're so natural together.
That is so kind. Thank you. More questions from you. Yeah, I mean, as far as Jason goes, Jason was always the dream director for this project. It's just you look at the tone of what we were trying to do, and we were so in sync. And I knew writing these scripts, it was like there's so few directors who actually could do what I really thought this show should be. And Jason and I share a TV agent, but Jason was in the middle he was posting a movie, and I ended up waiting a fairly long time for him to read it because he was in production and post. And I'm really glad I did, because when he did read it, he liked it, and we sat down and sort of vibed right off the bat. As far as casting goes, I will give that to him.
And if I can also just talk about the screenplay for a second, I think there's a lot of great writers out there, but there are very few voices. And what I find often is that I get scripts that are very well written, but I don't find an original voice in it. And my experience with Zander was very similar to the experience I had reading Juno for the first time by Diablo Cody, where I read a script that was so funny and so well thought out. But beyond that, there was a voice that I had certainly never read before that really was provocative and funny in an interesting way and got me excited. And it gave me that feeling that any director needs, which is, I need to direct this. If someone else directs this, I may just murder them. And that's how I felt when I read Casual. I couldn't imagine letting it go. And then it becomes scary. It becomes like a first date. You're like, all right, are we going to get along? And here I met this young man, and so young, and so gifted, and so assured of himself, and already knew how to talk about his story, and already knew how to talk about the trajectory, and talk about business. There was something so thoughtful about him, as you could tell, just from moment one, in a way that I certainly never was at his age. And look, like anyone alive right now, I am in love with what is happening in television. I work with a producer named Helen Estabrook, who is at the soul of the show. It's a crime that she's not sitting here right now, frankly. And we've been looking for an opportunity to do something together, and we read this. It was like, aha, here it is. And then we just couldn't wait to do it.
Another question? Just raise your hand. They'll find you. Well, okay, let's wrap up. Tomorrow, you've all had was there another one? You've all had a sneak peek at over here, okay. Here comes the microphone.
My name's Callie Rawson, by the way. Do you guys sit around a room and create these scenarios? Because everybody everybody connects with them because it's happened to somebody they know or somebody. So do you come up with your ideas alone, Zander?
No. I have a great writing staff. There's 5 other writers, and they are fantastic. And a lot of the stories in both these seasons.
That's it? 5?
Yeah, it's myself and 5 others and Helen. And we sit in this room all day for a couple months and break them out. And a lot of the stories are true life from our writers who've sort of lived these interesting lives, these relationship stories. We hire them based on their ability to tell stories about their lives and sort of how open they are about their sex lives and families and all of that. So, yeah, a lot of this is true from their life. I have a little less life experience than them, so I find I'm often sitting there kind of just trying to take as much as I can from them because you're not that old. No, I just feel like everything they have experienced kind of fits in perfectly with the show, and we really try to portray something truthful. So a lot of it is like, well, if the writer has experienced this and lived this, then let's do a version with our characters. Like, how does it fit into our world? And I think that for us is the best way to sort of gauge the truth of this, and if it's going to be relatable, which for us is sort of the ultimate goal.
Well, you've all had a sneak peek at the first episode. It airs or premieres tomorrow on Hulu. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your family. And if you're an Academy voter, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your family. The ballots come out in just a few days, and let's all head to the party.